As Mr. Kim watched the hunter walk away, he felt like he already knew Jin-Woo's answer without hearing it out loud. Then Thomas appeared, and the two security guards looked shocked. "Sir," one of them said, sitting up straight. "Sir," the other added, also stiffening up. Thomas waved for them to sit back down. He pressed his thumb against the fingerprint scanner, and with a small beep, the door slid open quietly. Thomas and Laura slipped into the dimly lit storage room, deep in the basement of the Scavenger Guild headquarters. As a-ranked security guards, they were among the select few with access to this mysterious space. A direct line connected the room to Thomas's office in the penthouse, just in case anything went sideways. Thomas marched to the farthest corner of the chamber. "You're seriously giving those items to him?" he asked. His voice tinged with doubt. Laura scanned her fingerprint, and a small beep granted them access to a secure section. Inside, shelves held various treasures, each one glinting under the faint light. Thomas's question hung in the air, unanswered. "Do you think they're worth risking our lives?" Laura asked, her voice sharp with frustration. Thomas hesitated. "I don't think that's the question here," he said quietly. Laura crossed her arms, glaring at him. "Then are you saying he's not good enough to use them?" Thomas didn't answer. Laura huffed and looked away, realizing it was pointless to argue. The guildmaster stood there, staring at the items he'd come for. They weren't his favorite weapons, but every time he saw them, he couldn't help but be impressed. "They're amazing," Thomas said, his voice filled with admiration. Laura still wasn't sure about giving them up. "There are only 2 of these in the whole world," she said. Thomas just nodded, looking pretty smug. "And that's not going to change anytime soon," he added with a grin. 8 years had passed since these weapons were made, but they were still super powerful. "The best tools for the best hunter," Thomas said, and you could tell he meant it. "You wouldn't want them to just rot in here, would you?" Thomas asked, his voice echoing faintly off the cold walls. As if answering him, 2 daggers in a glass case sparkled, catching the dim light above. Outside, the streets were filled with darkness, and an eerie feeling lingered in the air. In a world where danger lurked around every corner, someone had to step up and lead. That someone was Gun-hee Go, the very first president of the Hunters Association. When no one else dared to take on the challenge, President Go didn't hesitate. He closed his thriving business and jumped into the fight, determined to unite the strongest hunters in the country. President Go had done some pretty amazing things as leader of the Hunters Association of Korea. He made sure hunters were protected and supported. When hunters gave their lives in the line of duty, President Go quietly helped their families through tough times. Over the years, many people whose lives he touched came to his memorial service to honor his memory and say goodbye. The area was packed with so many citizens that it couldn't fit one more person. They gathered for a candlelit vigil, sharing stories and tears together. TV stations cut into their regular shows to talk about President Go and his legacy. On a giant digital billboard in the heart of the city, footage played of President Go speaking firmly. When another S-rank gate opens, he said, "Think about who will really protect you." Sure, here's a fun and engaging version of your text for a 7th grade reading level. You might be able to afford a fancy condo worth $1 million, or even tens of millions. But there's one thing you can't buy: life. The walk signal changed, but no one moved. Everyone was frozen, staring at either the giant billboard or their phones. Then a new clip popped up. It showed President Go's doctor, who had worked with him for years, being interviewed. "I was right there with President Go when he watched Hunter Jin-Woo Sung battling those massive ants on Jeju Island," the doctor said. "It was an intense moment. He told me he wouldn't regret dying because his biggest dream had finally come true. But I had no idea we'd lose him like this." The doctor's eyes had been red even before our conversation started, and now he completely broke down in tears. It brought back memories of when President Go cried silently with the families of the hunters who lost their lives during that failed mission to stop the ants on Jeju Island. President Go was a leader who had just as many fans as he did critics. But, on this day, everyone honored him. That night, Jin-Woo stood at the top of Daesung Tower, a skyscraper with 100 floors. The wind didn't bother him at all. Below, the bright lights of downtown Seoul sparkled like diamonds. On a giant outdoor screen, a documentary about President Go was playing. Jin-Woo's sharp eyes scanned the city, as if he were a hawk hunting for its next move. He had done this before, so his shadow scouts quickly searched every corner of the city. They sent back loads of info, but none of it mattered. No sign of the ancient ice slayer anywhere. This wasn't going to work. Jin-Woo had no doubts it wouldn't be easy capturing a magic beast that could jump between dimensions. He'd tried placing one of his shadows on the beast, just as it was about to escape. Jin-Woo had hit a roadblock. The creature didn't have one thing that everything else in the world has: a shadow. Maybe it was because of this whole astral body thing. The King of Giants had told Jin-Woo that monarchs and rulers couldn't become shadow soldiers, because they had these special bodies made of energy. If that's why they don't cast shadows, then Jin-Woo's best way to track them was gone. But that didn't matter right now. The King of Giants had warned Jin-Woo that once the other monarchs found out about him, they'd come after him with everything they had. They would come back sooner or later, and next time they'd be after Jin-Woo. Jin-Woo let out a low growl just thinking about it. Ever since he survived the double dungeon and gained his powers from the system, he hadn't let a single enemy slip away. But this ice elf, it had been the first to escape him. Jin-Woo had always been great at defeating his enemies, whether they were humans or magical creatures. He wasn't about to let this one get away either. But then he stopped and realized something strange. Thinking back, had he gotten any messages from the system when he fought Dong So Haud, Wong, or Thomas Andre? Usually the system warned him with alerts or urgent quests whenever his life was in danger. Here's something weird: when Dong So Ka Wong, Tasik Kang, or Chul Kim showed up, there were no surprises. The system always followed the same rules for them. But then there was Riji Goto. He went all out during a sparring match, and the system sent Jin-Woo a warning right away. But here's where it gets strange: when Dong-soo came after Jin-Woo to avenge his brother's death, or when Thomas threatened to kill him, the system stayed completely quiet. No warnings, no alerts, nothing. If you ask me, that's pretty strange. Jin-Woo was totally confused. No matter how he looked at it, he just couldn't figure it out. He pulled out his phone to check something. Good thing he had gotten the contact number from the manager earlier. It was 1 a.m. in Korea, but since it was daytime on the east coast of the US, he figured it was okay to call Ryan. As Jin-Woo hoped, the man picked up after a few rings. "I didn't think you'd reach out first, Mr. Sung," Thomas said, sounding surprised. "There's something I want to ask you," Jin-Woo replied. Thomas asked, clearly caught off guard. "Sure, ask away." "I'll answer as honestly as I can," Thomas said. "That day we fought." Jin-Woo started. "What about it?" Thomas replied, sounding a bit defensive. "Were you really trying to kill me back then?" Jin-Woo asked. Thomas seemed uncomfortable, like he didn't want to think about it. But Jin-Woo assured him, "I'm just curious. You don't have to hide anything." The American paused for a moment before answering truthfully. "Honestly, when I get really mad, I can't think straight. So yeah, back then, I was trying to hurt you badly." Jin-Woo had already guessed as much. He could tell Thomas had meant to harm him during their fight. But the system stayed completely quiet.
"No doubt about it, something felt off."
"Mr. Sung," Thomas said, breaking the awkward silence that followed his last statement.
"Let's talk about something cool I've been working on."
Click. Jin-Woo wasn't in the mood for jokes, so he quickly said goodbye and hung up. Thomas's answer made things clear. Suddenly the system didn't react when enemies came at him. This was a big change from how things used to be. At first Jin-Woo had been forced to fight off attackers, but now nothing happened. He couldn't ignore this. Back when Jin-Woo first got the message that his heart would stop if he didn't kill his enemies, he'd had an idea of what the system wanted. It seemed like the system was pushing him to do what it wanted. But now those urgent alerts had stopped coming. That made Jin-Woo wonder, maybe the system's plan had changed. With his newfound freedom, Jin-Woo could finally show some mercy. He decided to spare Thomas's life, which he wouldn't have been able to do if there had been an urgent quest to complete. This fresh sense of control felt good, but it also left him confused. Why was he suddenly granted more freedom? Did it somehow tie back to the original owner of his powers, and their betrayal of the other monarchs? But what if their plans had been derailed, because the person who created everything was gone? Jin-Woo shook his head, trying to quiet the whirlwind of thoughts and guesses swirling in his mind. He needed to focus on setting clear goals now, and one of those was to defeat the ancient Ice Slayer. Jin-Woo had another cool idea: dig into some secrets about the other monarchs. It'd be awesome if the Ice Slayer came after him first, but even if the Ice Slayer decided to go after the other hunters instead, Jin-Woo was ready with some tricks up his sleeve. As soon as the Ice Slayer fell into Jin-Woo's trap, he could knock out both goals in one shot. But there was one big hitch. Time was running out. He wasn't sure when the monarchs would show up, so he trained hard every day to face some tough foes. Luckily, he had a plan. He headed to a place where he could level up steadily. Japan. After the giants wreaked havoc, Japan couldn't fix everything, so they left some areas behind. While Jin-Woo was in the US, lots of dungeons broke open, and magic beasts started taking over territories. These monsters were super scary to the Japanese people, but to Jin-Woo, they were like an all-you-can-eat buffet. He couldn't help feeling pumped at the thought. His phone buzzed with a message from Thomas. "Mr. Sung, can you call me back?" There was still a lot to talk about, but for now, the tension between them had started to fade away. Just like how the ground dries after a heavy rain, Thomas seemed ready to patch things up with Jin-Woo after their fight. Jin-Woo was cool with that. He wasn't going to ignore someone who wanted to make peace. Their talk could definitely wait, right? Jin-Woo appreciated that Thomas wasn't holding a grudge, but it was getting super late. He quickly typed back, "I'll catch up with you later. Got something important I need to handle." After hitting send, a small smile crept onto Jin-Woo's face. This little chat didn't change his plans. He was going to keep leveling up and get ready for whatever came next. Nothing had changed, and that was a good thing. Jin-Woo felt way better now compared to how he felt when he first arrived at the top of Daesung Tower. As Jin-Woo walked down from the tower, he had a bounce in his step. But Jin-Woo wasn't the only one getting ready for battle. The Frost Monarch had retreated to its lair, and called together all the other rulers in this realm. 3 men and 1 woman appeared in its ice cave. The Frost Monarch addressed the 4 royal figures standing before him. "The Shadow Monarch has arrived," it told them, explaining what had happened. The cave was so cold it could turn a person's blood to ice. But the monarchs didn't even flinch. What really made the air feel freezing was how furious they were at this terrible news. "Didn't you once say there were no vessels strong enough to hold his power?" One of them growled. Even the king of wild dragons couldn't survive in this world for the same reason. But then the Frost Monarch shook its head, making it clear things weren't as simple as that. "I saw him myself," one of the monarchs said, their voice steady but serious. Another nodded in agreement. They had both faced the Shadow Monarch's power on Jeju Island before. The Frost Monarch stepped forward, looking around at the group with a grim expression. "This guy is even more dangerous than the fragments of luminosity. They declared I need to take him down. Are you with me?" But the other rulers didn't budge. They just stood there in silence, their faces unchanging. He was the strongest ruler in the chaotic world, and fighting him would be super risky. The other leaders decided to play it safe. One of them suggested, "Why not wait for the King of Wild Dragons? He's super powerful, and can totally take down the traitor." The Frost Monarch growled, showing its sharp teeth, ready for action. "Even though we're outcasts, each of us leads a powerful army. For how much longer will we wait around for the King of Wild Dragons?" The dagger that struck the Frost Monarch didn't just hurt its shoulder, it wounded its pride. Now the Frost Monarch needed to get revenge on the Shadow Monarch. "The best time to attack the Shadow Monarch is while he's still human," one of them said. "Help me send him back to the void," one of them said, trying to sound brave. But then a monarch backed out. "I won't be part of this." Another disappeared after thinking about what happened to Balan, the king of demons, who had fought the Shadow Monarch. "I don't want to end up like the Lightning Monarch," someone admitted. The Frost Monarch let out a frustrated sigh. "Cowards," it muttered. Only 3 monarchs stayed. One of them, a towering figure, turned to face the Frost Monarch. "Where's the proof he's even human anymore?" The Frost Monarch was ready for this moment. With a flourish he revealed the dagger Jin-Woo had thrown earlier. A green goo stuck to its shiny blade. He coated the dagger with poison. It wasn't just any poison. It was super dangerous stuff that would melt the skin of most chaos creatures on contact. Jin-Woo had secretly used poison beforehand as his trump card. It was smart and sneaky, but this wasn't how the Shadow Monarch usually operated. This move made it obvious that a human was now controlling the Shadow Monarch. The Frost Monarch then turned to its 2 companions who were still hanging back and asked politely, "Are you on my side in this?" The Frost Monarch's strength was about equal to that of the now human Shadow Monarch. But when they joined forces with the others, they were sure they could conquer their enemy. The 2 monarchs exchanged a look and thought about it for a moment, before agreeing. "I'll help you," one said. Let's destroy the Shadow Monarch. The other agreed. The Frost Monarch was determined to make the human who had wounded its shoulder tremble with fear, and it sneered at the thought.